Guess what time it is today? It's time to go tune an N20 with Darton sleeves on the dyno. Loading it up, getting the rings bed in. So far so good, no leaks, no weird noises or anything like that. We've done 130 k's of break-in and she has no problems. So we've just arrived to get a blue slip done so we can get the car registered. So far it's been running all right. Done nearly 200 k's on the car, which is pretty good. Needs a bit more fine tuning on the tune, obviously, but it's running well enough that we're pretty happy with it so far. So now it's time to go get the blue slip done. So we're here in at Richmond at Service New South Wales. We're gonna go and surrender our plates so we can get new plates and register Ken's car. Woohoo! Exciting day. We can drive it home after that and then start doing some road logging and get some K's into it and make sure she's running all pretty before we chuck her on the dyno and send it. Okay, so we've done alignment now. We've been testing tuning the car. We've done about 600 K's in the car now, another 400 and we're ready to go. Hop back on the dyno. I've been fine tuning response and spool up and just getting the car to operate where we want it to. It's feeling really good now. Realistically, it's just upping the boost a bit more and then pumping some power through it. Most likely we'll end up leaving that in probably on dyno day. But the car has been handling pretty well, especially after the alignment. There's a little nick in the steering. It feels like something's getting a bit stuck when you steer. I think it's the actual column that goes from the steering wheel to the steering rack. I think it's just not aligned properly because it's perfect, and then it sort of gets stuck and then it goes again. So little issue there. Otherwise, no other issues. The MST intake on this, as we all know, they cause a bunch of issues with startup. I managed to get it a little bit better with some scaling on the MAF sensor, but ultimately, it might have fixed the startup and the idle, but then cruising was a problem. The trims were just all over the place. So I ended up actually just disabling the MAF sensor for open loop fuel control, and we're just determining MAF off of the throttle body now. That seems to have done the job. Everything's where it needs to be with these injectors, these S63 TU EU5 injectors. So, anywho, it's time to go take it for a drive. Woo! You know what today is? Today, we chuck Ken's car on the dyno. Let's go. Well, we did something today. We have put Ken's N20 engine with our Darton sleeve technology inside of it up on the dyno, and we've gotten a power run done. The results weren't, I guess, what we were after. They weren't bad. We were really struggling with fuel quality today. Like, it was terrible. Actually, it was probably terrible. I mean, for contrast, some of the boost pressures that we were running today, I had to run nearly 4 degrees less timing than what I would on a stock N20 on 93 octane in the US with stage 2 turbo, for example, at 24-25 psi. Like, I can run normally around 8-9 degrees of timing in the top end, and today I had to run between like 6-5 or reduced boost. So we struggled greatly with fuel quality today. So we ended up with some octane booster in, and we managed to run our targets we sort of wanted to. Not where we wanted them to be, but that was still pretty good nonetheless. The last run that we did before the engine failed was 240 kilowatts. I mean, it peaked at 246, but it plateaued and just sort of stayed at 240. So I'm saying 240 because there was a spike, which we think actually might have been because of the coolant getting in the combustion chamber, possibly on that spike. And that's why the car spiked in that run. But either way, we did 220 kilowatts today, which, I mean, it's still impressive. It's still really good numbers. It's the highest numbers that we've ever seen on these dynos with bigger turbo and 98 RON for this engine platform. Normally stage 2 turbos do like about 210 on 98 or less. So overall, really good day. What we did find though is that there could be some improvements made to the inlet. The inlet is an ID of 52 millimeters. We could definitely go bigger on that because the turbo has a 62 millimeter juicer on the compressor wheel, which means, you know, ideally you want whatever is feeding it air to be at least the same size as the compressor wheel. The exhaust is still stock. Now we are running obviously a sport downpipe, but we are still running a stock resonator and muffler and exhaust system. So there are some key restrictions there, particularly that, you know, could have given us another 5 or maybe 10 kilowatts, give or take. But I think overall, I think if the fuel quality was up to standard with where it is in the rest of the world, and the fact that we had the right inlet and the right exhaust in the car, I think we could have at least done close to 240 kilowatts, which would have meant that we would have basically gotten back to where we were pre-engine failure. So overall, good day. Car's happy as. We improved the bottom end and the mid-range phenomenally over any other tuning we've had on this car. The car just pulls. It's running around 400 newton meters of torque, which, I mean, you know, might sound pretty low, but in all honesty, it's a good combo between torque and power. And this is the biggest problem really with some of the other turbo options, that they're very high on torque and not very high on power. Whereas we're higher on power and lower on torque, and it's a better ratio, to be honest. Torque, yeah, might feel great off the line, but it's not going to get you anywhere quicker. Okay, we are going to install a custom stage 3 low pressure fuel pump solution into Ken's car. So we need to first remove the I guess beauty plate or cover that seals the chassis to the fuel tank area. It's just 1, 2, 3, 4. It's 5 10mm plastic nuts. Just put it on this and do it. And once they're off, you just simply pull up. As you can see, the harness is here. You can see we fit our custom fuel line for the high pressure fuel pump system. Now, simply I'm just going to undo this plug. Done. Alrighty. Now, as you can see, we now have that exposed. Now, this is going to be under pressure when you go to remove them. So just be mindful of that. Now, for this, we are going to have to punch some holes in this and seal it up so that we can run our wiring out. Okay. Took me like an hour, but I got this off. Why so long? Because this fucking lock tool that I bought was not right. So I tried to make it work and it kept slipping off. Anyway, so I did the old-fashioned method of basically just punching it with a hammer and making sure and being careful I wasn't damaging the tank. Now, getting it out is not easy. You've still got to fumble and fidget to get it out. But the main thing you have to realize too is you can't just reef the bloody thing out, because probably only just see it here. See that hose down there? That goes to the other side of the tank, so you can't just pull it all out. You've got to be careful. Okay, so to get this out, this actually rotates down and then you can pull it out pretty nice and easy. And then you can pull it out. You just got to remember, be careful at any point. Do not have any live electricity around this. Do not have any open flames. try and do this when your fuel tank is like at least at most half full. You don't want it to be any more than that, because as you pull this out, fuel's going to go everywhere. So when you do pull this out, there's an O-ring, but there's also a little clip here, just where this finger is. You need to push that down before it'll pull out. And you also need to disconnect the wiring harness as well. Now, obviously we don't want any dirt and debris and contaminants to get in there, so just try and throw something over it. Now I'm just going to use this cloth. Okay, so here we have our stage 3 parts. Got a bracket for the fuel pump, our fuel hoses, a T to go in here, a wiring harness and a hob switch. So we've got a 25 PSI hob switch, so once this turns on with 25 PSI boost in the charge pipe, it will close the circuit and run the pump. Now the pump will be directly connected by the battery, and this is effectively a relay that's boost activated. That way this pump only activates when we need it, and we can rely on this one to be controlled off of the ECU. The reason being is that the EKPs are known to be historically weak, so whilst it would be easier to just replace this pump and make it a one unit, it's actually just better for us to avoid any EKP related issues if we do this. Now, the problem with running, say, 2 pumps is here we need to put holes in this to put wiring harness through. This is the Walbro 460 84 PSI version. There is a 112 PSI version. The problem with the 112 is that it draws so much current, and I've had this issue on my own car, is if you use the factory plugs, it'll actually melt this plug. Way too much amperage. Now we've obviously got to run wiring to the engine bay and back to the fuel tank for this. It's not the end of the world, it can be done. These are heat shrunk onto the fittings. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, it's been a little bit of stuffing around, but we're here. These are heat shrinkable, but I put a clamp on there just in case. Same here. As you can see, I don't have a heat shrinkable one here because, well, I got a bit carried away with the heat gun and it melted too much. So I've put the bracket in. Ironically, the Raceworks bracket says it supports Walbro pumps. It doesn't support the pump. So I've put a bit more rubber in the middle here just to keep it in place. I've then drilled holes in this and then put some bolts in to screw it in place. This needs to go back down. This needs to plug back in. But I figured I might as well show you while we're here. As you can see in here, there's 4 tabs to pull this assembly out, and then that needs to come out with it. Now, this can separate, which is fine, because that slides into either there or it slides into a little thing down there. But just an FYI, it's a ground pin. There's a positive cable just here. Just being mindful. Obviously, this is our outlet and the plugs, and I've still got to tap holes into the top there. But so far, it's coming along. I've just got to put the strain on the other pump and hook the hose up to the pump, and then do the wiring and put it back in the car. Alrighty, we've got our holes drilled. I've just got to seal it up. Our pump's in, strainer's on, just bolted in. All the hoses are all secured. Our wiring's in. I might just move this around, neaten it up a little bit, the wiring here, but our holes are tapped. That's the main thing. It's pretty much ready to go back in the car now, and then wire up our hob switch. Fuck. Good luck to whoever has to pull that out. An absolute nightmare to install. I'll show you some photos in a sec. Basically, I had to remove the retaining clip to pull the top of the bucket off entirely, so that it was just 2 parts, essentially. This top hat here and the rods, the stainless rods and the spring, and then the bottom section that has like the level switch and the pumps and that. I then put the bucket in, connected it to the hose that goes to the other side of the tank with the secondary leveler. I then had to screw the second pump into place in the tank itself. I had to undo it outside. I couldn't put it all in one unit. Once that was all together, I then had to try and jimmy the primary pump back into the inside of the bucket. And then I had to try and fit this back into the bucket section, like to put the rods back into the main section and stuff, and make sure the hoses weren't crimped and were the right way. And man, It's fucked. Anyway, I've got to fix the sealing here because I thought I'd sealed it, but the wires pulled through, which to be honest actually made my life a little bit easier because the wires were a bit too tight. And then I just got to wire it up and put this bloody lock ring back on. What a job. Okay, I think it's like 12:30. Oh, what a mammoth day this has been. I haven't finished, but I have the hob switch is in the charge pipe. I've thread locked, or Loctite rather, the threads on the 1.8 NPT threading that's in the charge pipe. I did run a thread cleaner through it because they're a little bit shit. On the FTP ones, I found that the way that they're tapped out, it's not the best. So I've cleaned it out. I've put the hob switch in, I've Loctited it. I've run wiring for the hob switch / secondary pump up to here in the footwell. I haven't gone across the firewall yet and into the engine bay. I actually need more cable, so I'm going to have to add cable to what I've bundled up under here. And then later, probably tomorrow afternoon or something, I'll then run the cable from here across into the firewall to the sensor. Yeah, overall, not the easiest install. I mean, granted, a lot of the stage 3 pumps have the dual pumps inside the one bucket, which is like cool or whatever. In this case, I didn't want to really cut into it too much or anything. So anyway, it's in there. It sounds like it's working. I need to fix up the wiring harness that comes out of the fuel tank, because where I tried to seal it, it's a bit loose, so its fuel will leak through there. So that's another job. I have to get some silicone and try and re-glue it. But that's today's efforts. I'm never doing this again. Well, it's time. We're going to head off down to Richmond to Windsor Exhaust. We're going to get a performance exhaust put on the car. Why there and any other than anywhere else? Well, I've had a pretty good experience with them in the past. You know, I'm not looking for a titanium bloody maybe 20 horsepower exhaust. I'm just looking for something that's nice, going to give a little bit more than what it currently is, and will improve the sound a little bit. This is a little surprise for Ken. We've got a VRSF performance downpipe from an N55 electronic wastegate going in as well, and we're going to replace the N20 catted downpipe with this VRSF catted downpipe. The reason why is because the current one on the N20 is a 400 cell. It's still considered a performance downpipe over the OEM one, but we're going to go to a 200 cell, which is legally what we're allowed to go to as a minimum, and it's going to give us a little bit more power. What we ended up doing with the N20 one is we had to modify the N20 one quite a bit to fit the turbo. We're going to go straight to an N55 one now. Make it nice and easy. It never gets old. Does it dose the bro? That was probably the charge point. I think we're in NA mode. So obviously I mustn't have put the charge pipe on 100% right last night, because it's just blown the charge pipe off. Oh well, it's an easy fix. I mean, it's always hard to get that bloody coupler right anyway on the N20, because there's a silicon joiner between the two CPs, and if you don't have it right, when you put the clamp on and stuff, it doesn't quite seal it properly. I mean, I had a feeling that was the case anyway, because when I put the clamp on last night, I was at least 60% certain it wasn't straight, and I tried re-straightening it and it kept going back to the same position, so I thought, oh, maybe it's just the way it is. But anyway, I do have all the tools on me to fix it, I think. I'm just going to pull into the servo and we'll fix it. Alrighty, so finish up yesterday, we had the exhaust done out at Windsor Exhaust. We had to modify the N55 catted downpipe slightly to make it fit because the turbo's not in the 100% the same location as the N55. Aftermarket exhaust, resonator delete, 3-inch stainless the whole way back. We have a reverse flow high performance muffler on there with dual tips on the out. It's actually not that noisy at all until you get about 5,000 to 7,000 RPM and it starts to open up a bit, but I would argue the intake is actually still louder than the exhaust. Just come back to Brintech to do a 98 RON dyno run with the exhaust and just make sure cam control and everything is in place. We did 235 kilowatts. That's a 15 kilowatt gain alone from just that. And that's on 98, not... Fuck me, that was quick. Not even E85 yet. Really decent gain. So if we're looking at 235 as our base, which is about 5 kilowatts off what I was aiming for, about 240, give or take fuel quality and stuff, I think 235 is a pretty decent number. You could sit there and fight for 240, to be honest. Maybe add like half a PSI boost in there, whatever, but I think 235 is a happy number. It's peaking at about 5,700 RPM per power. It does fall off a bit after that, but that is a prone problem with this turbo anyway on the N55s. We're peaking torque at about 3,800 RPM, but man, does this car feel so much better. Fuck me, it goes hard. Absolutely awesome. The downpipe actually made a substantial difference to the spool-up control over the last one. A substantial difference. Anyway, so all that's left now for E85, I just need to wire up the stage 3 low pressure fuel pump. Obviously the primary pump is enabled, but the secondary pump is not enabled just yet. The wiring is mostly run, it just needs to go through the firewall to the hop switch, and I just need to finish the sealing on one of the wiring looms, just make sure it's weatherproof. Otherwise, it's going great. Pretty good car. Just got to get some times now. Alrighty, so we've got our hob switch for the stage 3 low pressure fuel pump. Once we hit 25 PSI boost, it'll basically bridge this connection and the pump will turn on. Wires run here and then they go down to the firewall here, and I've glued it in place. And then from there it goes through the dash, across to the driver's side here, and then under the beauty covers along the sort of rail of the chassis into the fuel pump section, so you can't see it, it's all nicely tucked away. And I've fixed up the ceiling for the actual bucket, so we're all good to go now. Pretty much just got to finish putting some of the beauty covers back together and we're ready to roll. Today we are off to the dyno to do E85 in the built N20 with an N55 turbo. Should do some pretty good results today, to be honest. And that's it. We now have a Australian record, the fastest N20, 264 kilowatts and about 440 newton meters of torque. This makes it the third fastest N20 in the world based on legible results. It's likely due to the high ambient temperatures, as you can see, of about 38 to 39 degrees Celsius. We could actually see this power figure climb even again into the 270 kilowatt range.